Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. Thank you for joining us today. We do have quite a bit to cover, so I am going to get started now, and if a few more people join us, that's absolutely fine. But welcome to today's webinar. VMware has changed what every business needs to know. My name is Sarah Bailey, and I'm joined today by our Senior Technical Solutions Architect, Graham Gray, and our technical consultant, Dave Moore. There you go, Dave. Graham's waving. Get away from Dave. Brilliant. So they're here today to answer all of your questions, which will be in our Q&A, and that will be at the end of the session. So please fire your questions throughout the webinar. You can do so using the Q&A section. If you look at the top, there's a Q&A section there. Please put your questions throughout this webinar in there, and we'll address them all at the end. If you don't know Nexus, we're an IT provider. We were established back in 1998. We serve the whole of the UK, and we support clients across all types of technology, obviously infrastructure, general IT support, cybersecurity. We're a Microsoft partner with 5 designations. We do disaster recovery and backup, AI, you name it, we do it. So as I say, we've got a lot to cover today, so I'm going to dive straight into it because I'm sure you're all keen to get into the Q&A as well. So firstly, why are we even talking about VMware? Well, VMware is a software that allows one powerful physical hardware server to behave like many separate computers. So it's a bit like having a large office that's shared by a number of different companies. And actually, what we find is that organizations sometimes don't even realize they have VMware running in the background, but actually it's running a lot of their critical systems and applications. Could be your finance system is reliant on it, your line of business software. But it's a hot topic at the moment. And that's mainly because there's been a huge increase in price. So why has that happened? So basically, VMware has been bought out. So at the end of 2023, Broadcom bought out VMware. And once they did that, they started to make some very significant changes. So the changes they made basically were to the licensing model. So they moved customers towards a subscription-based licensing model, and they've shrunk the product portfolio. They've been pretty open in saying that they are focused on their enterprise market, and actually the SMB market and the mid market is not really where they're targeting anymore. So that has resulted in a change of their model, and now the options that are available are much more feature rich and really suited to enterprise level clients, so sort of 10,000 users and above. And that's really meant that the changes they've made have been quite significant for a number of businesses, which is probably why you're here. So as we said, subscription-based licensing is now in existence and it's the only way you can buy it. But they've also moved from being CPU socket price-based to CPU cores. So for organizations running modern high core count servers, that's increased the price significantly. But they've also reduced the portfolio, the product portfolio. So editions that you might have previously had are no longer available. And it's kind of like going into a car dealership. You want a family car, but actually now the only option is the Ferrari. So you're having to pay for a lot more of an expensive bundle for things that you might not need. We obviously have really recommended clients to take this opportunity to have a look at their options. But the main reason is that the increase in price, they're really significant. So we're talking up to 300%. And, as we know, virtualization is not cheap to start with. But when you're seeing increases of up to 300%, it becomes a board level discussion. It's no longer just the IT department's problem. It really takes the whole business to review what are you going to do now about your environment and how are you going to get a cost effective platform going forward, rather than accepting an increase in price. Nobody would accept an increase in price if your mobile phone contract went up by 300%. It's the same with this. People want to know what their options are. So even though this has felt like quite a negative thing within the industry, we feel it's a really good opportunity for businesses to review the options and make the right decision for their business going forward, looking at multiple things. The question is really, do you stay or do you go? And that's why we're here to help. We're talking to clients all the time, and we have been for many months now. And we really think they need to ask a number of questions. Obviously, the first one is, should you renew? But also that there's other things to consider now. Do you want to move to the cloud? Is that a better option for your business in a hybrid or a full capacity? Is there another platform out there that would be better suited? How's your infrastructure? Are your servers out of date? How's your hardware looking? You want a cost-effective option, and that's what we're here to sort of help you find. We've split it down into four main options. So, of course, yes, you could stay with VMware. It's still in existence, and we've been big fans of VMware for many years. It's still a fantastic product. Minimal disruption, it's familiar, etc. However, the price increase for majority of people is just not tangible anymore. Unfortunately, that's causing people to move away. The other option, obviously, is moving to the cloud, Microsoft Azure. You could look at that as an option. We've been having conversations with our clients about that as an option as well. Perhaps you want to reduce your on-premise infrastructure. Perhaps you've had an office move. Perhaps you're looking to grow and it's just not scalable enough. Maybe you want a different operational expenditure model financially. Maybe moving to the cloud works better for you. However, obviously, with anything in Microsoft world, you are subject to subscription charges, and we know Microsoft are not backwards in coming forwards in putting their prices up. So, of course, there's a price consideration there as well. You could move to an alternative, and that's where Proxmox comes into play. So, our specialists went out to the market when this happened and reviewed a number of options, and after doing their due diligence, Proxmox came up as a very mature, tangible option. And the key reason is it's got really lower licensing costs, but also it's got the enterprise features that you're used to getting with VMware. It's an open source platform, and it's really suitable for businesses that are looking for an alternative. We'll go more into Proxmox shortly. But we have some nice news as well, which has just happened actually in the last 24 hours. So we're now a silver partner with Proxmox. So you would be in good hands with us. The final option really is just to review everything. So as we've said, this is an opportunity now for your business to look at your infrastructure, look at your cybersecurity. Are you staying up to date? AI has changed cyber in a massive way. Are you fit to protect your business with new threats that are coming? How's your disaster recovery plan? Have you tested it? Would you know it would work if something happened tomorrow? How's your hardware looking? Look at your life cycle. Do servers need replacing? Backup and recovery. Again, it's time to really have a look at those options and pick the right one for you. So, Proxmox, we've talked about it a little bit, but what actually is it? Well, essentially, it performs the same core role, running and managing your business servers and applications, but with a more cost-effective licensing model. The key point here is it's not a new or emerging platform. This hasn't just been bought out of this VMware situation. They have been around for a long time. In fact, the company was founded in 2005, and Proxmox Virtual Environment has been going since 2008. And actually, it's used today by businesses all across the world, private, public sector, educational institutions. It's a well-established, mature alternative, and it includes enterprise-grade features, so high availability, live migration between hosts, clustering, integrated backup support. So from a user perspective, nothing will change. The key element here is the cost. The cost is different, the commercial model is different, and it is an open source piece of software as well. Going into why are people moving over to VMware, and obviously since the VMware situation, Proxmox has grown massively in terms of its adoption. So obviously we've talked about the cost. That's a key one for you. The enterprise features, I think, are also really important because you want like for like. You want the functionality and the capability that you're used to from a VMware situation. But it's also scalable. So maybe you've got a couple of servers, or maybe you've got large multi-node environments. If you're looking to grow, it can scale with you. So there's no limitation there. The other thing that we found is the clients that we've already migrated, they don't need to invest in new hardware. So actually, for 99% of cases, the existing servers actually are suitable for Proxmox. Again, you're not having to invest in further hardware, which is a huge benefit as well. And it's growing in adoption. So there's more and more use cases coming out around Proxmox. So, it could be the right choice for you, but it really comes down to what your business is looking for. We have migrated a number of clients, and we've just picked a few here that we've been working with over the last sort of 12 months in terms of migration. And all of these clients, we've sat down with them, and our specialists, Graham and Dave, have gone through their options that we've just gone through today, and we've looked at what is the right thing for their business. And it does need to be tailored to your environment and your setup and your future growth and goals. So ultimately, you want something with minimal disruption. You want it to be cost effective, and you want that transition to be handled professionally. So here's Rob Taylor at William Southern giving us some nice feedback. We've also got Tamar Crossings. I'm sure everyone's been across the Tamar Bridge into Cornwall. So obviously, essential, critical that they keep running. And as they say there, we've got Daryl talking about the transition, straightforward, low risk. These are all the words you want to hear when you have to make a major change. And then we've also got Key Organics. So handling the project carefully, delivered with minimal disruption. At the end of the day, you have a business to run, and this needs to run in the background. As we said, sometimes it's just running and you don't even know it's there. And that's kind of how you want it, really. So Proxmox is extremely powerful, but one thing to note, it does only offer business hour support, and it is an online ticketing system, so email only. So we've actually decided to create an add-on product to this. We call it Guardians for Proxmox, and essentially it's offering you that proactive support, so monitoring and remediation of issues, so basically preventing any issues before you even know about it. So you do get support with Proxmox and you get a 4-hour SLA, but ideally you never want to have to make use of that. You just want things to be fixed before you even know about them. So this is what Guardian for Proxmox does, and we will be proactively applying and managing updates in the background. You get an SLA with this as well, and you get access obviously to our engineers. So with Proxmox, obviously it is email only. However, if you were having the add-on, you would have access to pick up the phone and speak to us essentially if there was ever an issue. It's essentially a management layer on top of Proxmox, so that's something that we offer as an addition if you should want it. Some of the mistakes that we've seen that we just want to point out in terms of clients looking at this situation and going ahead with it. So some people have just said, you know what, I just don't have time to look at this. I'm going to just look at it next year. And they're kicking the can down the road, but essentially you are moving that problem down the road. You are going to have to do something about this at some point. And a couple of things to note here. Firstly, if you're on the main version, which a lot of people are, which is version 8, support will end in October 2027. So obviously, if you do renew for another 12 months, just be aware that support will end in 2027. If also you let your license expire, then things will just stop working. There is a hard line. There is no kind of buffer there. If you turn off a virtual machine after your license expires, you won't be able to turn it back on again. Backups won't be able to be performed. There is a real risk with letting that expire. The other thing is, if you do let the renewal date lapse, there's also a possible 20% charge that could be added, reinstatement fee, on top of your increased rate as well. So if you've had a quote in for sort of 20k, you'd be looking at another 20% on top of that if you do let your support expire and then you renew after that date. So the key takeaway here is just start planning early. If you've got a renewal date, make sure you use that as the date that you want your decision made by, not the date that you start thinking about it. The other thing that we've seen clients have a consideration around is, well, we can handle this in-house. It's open source. How hard can it be? And yeah, it is open source, but a word of caution, it's might be easy to download and install, but actually it's an enterprise level migration, and it's much less prescriptive than VMware. So it just basically expects a greater level of Linux, networking, and virtualization knowledge. There are much fewer guardrails. So design decisions that you make at the beginning will have a significant impact on the resilience and the performance and the recoverability later down the line. So even though you might find the day-to-day administration generally straightforward, it's the architecture, the build, the migration that requires quite an expertise. Especially, obviously, you're going to want to deploy this to best practice. So yeah, our specialists have been through vigorous training with Proxmox, and they've obviously been through real life migrations as well, and there's a real learning curve to have. So we would just err a warn of caution if you're considering doing this in-house. We would always recommend getting a trained expert involved. Really, the big point here is maybe this is the opportunity here to review your entire environment. You know, the license renewal on its own is not the biggest opportunity. There is an opportunity for you to step back and consider your overall setup, making sure you're right for your business future. And maybe you can solve several challenges as part of a single infrastructure review, rather than just tackling one individually. You know, look at your IT budget, sit down with your IT provider. Hopefully they help you and support you with putting that roadmap in place and that budget in place. Talk about those elements in a wider view rather than just worry about this one license renewal. I think it's a good opportunity for you to consider more. So final takeaways from me: before you sign on the dotted line, just really understand that cost, understand the renewal date, understand that cost, and then make sure you're clear on what the alternatives are, the pros and cons of those alternatives, and of course the migration effort, because there would be a migration effort involved, and understand how that looks and what that might cost as well. Don't panic. Might be easy for me to say, but yeah, obviously knee-jerk reactions are not the right thing to do in this situation. Make an informed decision. Don't automatically renew, but don't let your renewal lapse either. And work with an expert. You know, there's experts out there. Obviously, we're here, and there's others as well. But make sure you use somebody that's got the knowledge and the experience to help you with this. So I'm in time. Brilliant. Right. So I'm really keen now to get into our Q&A, and hopefully we've had some questions. So I'm just going to have a little look. So Dave and Graham, let's see what questions we have for you. Yes. So Chris, my colleague Chris, has been showing some of the case studies in here, if you want to have a look at those as well. So one of the questions we had come through actually yesterday from somebody who wasn't able to make it today, but they wanted it covered, is in terms of the migration to Proxmox. If you are going to migrate to Proxmox, what kind of disruption should people expect?
I can field that one for you if you like, Sarah.
Please, thank you.
So yeah, it is a disruptive process. Any kind of source virtual machines do need to be shut down for the duration of the transfer, the migration, and there is a sort of a post-migration step as well to make the virtual machine sort of best practice on the Proxmox infrastructure. So there, with a lot of customers, there tends to be a mix of some servers that they can take down during working hours that that don't affect production, but there is other stuff that needs to be can't be taken down during working hours and needs to be moved out of hours. But it is disruptive in terms of needing to take the machines down to migrate them, and the time that they will be down is largely dictated by the performance of the network, the performance of the storage appliances, etc. This is all the sort of stuff that will come out in the wash when we do the planning for the project. So we've got a good feel for how long things take, so we can give pretty good accurate estimates based on your existing infrastructure.
Awesome, thank you, Graham. Something else somebody asked as well is obviously you've got the renewal cost coming in, and there will be a cost associated with that migration. When will clients when will they be in the green? When would they actually be in, better off from a cost point of view, including the cost of that migration?
I'd say in a lot of cases for many clients, again, it depends on the size of their infrastructure and on how much professional services time is involved in that process. But for a lot of clients, they are able to migrate to the Proxmox platform and perform the full migration within the cost of their VMware renewal. So it's cheaper just to move to Proxmox and pay for the project than it is to just renew VMware. And those who don't achieve sort of price parity in the first year, by the second year, you're definitely into savings by then. So the the return on investment for this is pretty short.
Awesome. Do we have any other questions from anybody that's joining us? Now is your time to ask.
We had an inquiry from somewhere else about how Proxmox pricing compares to the pre-Broadcom takeover. So if you were paying X amount of pounds prior to Broadcom's acquisition, how's your Proxmox VE licensing costs likely to stack up against that?
I think if you're talking about pre-Broadcom VMware support licensing renewals, the old SNS renewals, those were actually very, very cheap. And Proxmox licensing is probably a little bit more expensive than what you'd have been used to back then. But certainly since, unless you had a long-standing kind of contract already in existence with VMware pre-Broadcom, you'll probably be already exposed to at least 1 year's worth of subscription licensing already. And Proxmox is certainly cheaper than the current renewal pricing for the subscriptions under version 8, I would say. Normally for Proxmox support pricing for their standard support, which gives you a 4-hour SLA, is typically around £523 currently per processor. So it's licensed for the sockets, not the cores like VMware is. So if you've got a high core count CPU, it'll be instantly magnitudes cheaper to license to buy the support for Proxmox.
And something else I've heard people ask questions about, it's described as open source, but it is not open source in the way that some software is sort of not commercially owned and operated and run. Is that right?
Yes and no. So Proxmox is built on Linux, Debian Linux, and it leverages a lot of open source tooling underneath to achieve certain things. So from that perspective, it is open source. However, obviously Proxmox have put their own layer on top of that for management and the way that it's all kind of tied together. But yeah, ultimately a lot of it is also based on sort of standard open source Linux tooling for many of the components.
We've had a couple of questions in actually. So Roger's asking, is this a Zen-based hypervisor?
Sorry, what was the question?
I might be pronouncing that right. Is this a Zen-based hypervisor or XN?
It's based on Linux KVM. So KVM's the sort of hypervisor that's built into the Linux kernel.
Hopefully that answers your question, Roger. But any other questions, let us know. What will be the response time for the SLA of our Guardians product?
That is an excellent question I cannot answer.
I shall go and research that right now, and I will come up with the answer for that shortly.
Come back to you on that one, Stephen. Any other questions coming through? While we're just waiting for a couple of other questions that might pop through, we've got we're offering a free complimentary infrastructure review for anybody that's interested. So you can sit down with Graham and Dave and understand what your alternatives are, what the opportunities might be for cost saving, and obviously all the advice is tailored to your setup and your needs and your environment. So if you want to take advantage of that, then scan the QR code and complete the form, or if you're a client of ours already, just get in touch with your account manager and we'll happily set that up for you. We've also got a couple of resources which we'll share in a moment. So we've put a shock cost guide together and a 60-second assessment. So we'll share all of that in the Q&A shortly. And obviously, if you want the slides, we can send those out, and the recording of the webinar will be available. So if anybody's interested in sharing this with some colleagues, then we'll make sure the recording is available. We've got one more question come through. So David has asked, what are your current Proxmox customers using for disaster recovery? Is anyone continuing to use Veeam, or have they switched to the Proxmox alternative?
As a general rule, we've been keeping people on Veeam because they support the Proxmox hypervisor from version 12. Version 13.1 of Veeam, which is coming out imminently, also adds a number of replication features into the product as well. So we're starting to see more and more of a feature parity on that front going forward. So yeah, we've been keeping on Veeam.
Hopefully that answers your question, David. Here we go, another one. So what are the reasons that you decided to go with Proxmox rather than the other alternatives such as Nutanix? Good question.
I can take this one if you like. So yeah, we basically reviewed a whole lot of hypervisors when the Broadcom announcement came. Nutanix was amongst that review. What we found with Nutanix is they're very HCI focused. So you have to buy into their whole HCI kind of licensing stack, and also they're very strict on the hardware that can run on. So in a lot of cases, the customer's existing hardware platform may not be suitable. They only support very specific kind of verticals. And like when you buy a Nutanix solution, often you're buying the whole kind of kit and caboodle. Really, you're getting the Nutanix Acropolis hypervisor, which is the on-premise one, and yeah, you often need servers that are spec'd by Nutanix and supplied by them to deliver against that. And what we found that once you priced all of that up, you might as well have just stick with VMware, given the costs of the Nutanix solution. Brilliant,
thanks, Graham. Hopefully that answers your question there, David.
I think one of the key takeaways with Proxmox for our customers so far is in most cases it just works on what you've got. There's no additional investment required to in hardware or changes like that to the stuff that you've got is suitable for Proxmox 99% of the time. Again, that's the sort of thing that will come out in the wash when we evaluate and plan the project.
Brilliant. Okay, perfect. So I'm just sharing the 60-second assessment that might be useful for some people. Whilst we just wait to see if there's any other questions that are coming through. And we'll share the guide as well. I think that might be it. Last couple of minutes if there's any other questions from anybody. And if anybody would like to obviously book in with that infrastructure review, then please do so. We'd love to have a conversation with you and see if we can help find the right solution. And I think that, oh no, just as I think that's it, there's another one coming through. Are there any notable features that VMware has but Proxmox doesn't? That's a good question.
I'd say that gap is closing pretty quickly. In version 9.2 of Proxmox, they introduced dynamic load balancing, which is kind of the equivalent to the enterprise VMware feature, the dynamic resource scheduler. So that's the automatic removal of virtual machines around your nodes in the cluster to optimize, resource utilization. There are some things it doesn't do still. But we find that most of the core requirements are slowly being met. Just trying to think, can you think of any, Dave, that stand out to you?
To me, the main nice thing that Proxmox has that VMware doesn't is the auto failover when you've got HA VMs. So if you put anything in maintenance, it disappears off, and you don't need affinity rules or anything like that to move things back within DRS. It remembers where it was. When you bring the host out of maintenance mode again, it automatically puts it back where it was, which makes maintenance tasks a lot easier.
DRS as well.
Yeah, DRS is now covered in 9.2 by the dynamic load balancing.
Excellent. Okay.
In answer to the service level agreement question for Guardian, so it uses the same service level agreement as all our managed services, with the exception of, I think, the telephony services have a slightly different SLA, but the standard one for high severity incidents, you'd be up to 4 hours. There's a target response times, and then you're up to 8 hours for medium and 20 hours for minor. So pretty sharp, really, I think. And we also monitor our resolution times, and our resolution times are generally quite respectable in the industry, and we publish some of those stats on our website as well.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone? I've just shared the guide, the Proxmox shock cost guide and the 60-second review. We've got the case studies up on our website as well if you wanted to have a look at those. And I'm sure our clients would be happy to, those that have already migrated, I'm sure if you wanted to have a conversation with them, I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you as well about their experience. And obviously we've got the infrastructure review if you wanted to take that one up. So I think that might be it. I think that's it from the questions. Thank you ever so much, everybody, for joining us. Hopefully that has been useful. If you want to take this conversation forward, then just get in touch with us, and we can put you in touch with Graham and Dave, and go into more detail for your specific environment. So yeah, that's it from us. Thanks everyone again, and we'll send out the recording, and we'll hope to speak to you again soon.